Hey guys, this is Ryan from Blipsounds. Today we're going to be going over our competition from September. We unfortunately don't really have our face cam and some other stuff because I'm currently in Vietnam. Google invited me back out here, so I'm been a little bit busy, and that's why this competition is coming a little bit late, and the next one will be just in a few days as a result, but yeah, I hope that you guys can bear with me for the time being, and I just want to go over the results of the competition. We have 5 people placing in this competition. We had a total of 6 entries, and I just want to go over, kind of give some feedback on the sounds here. Also should mention my my not ideal recording space. I'm currently in a large bathroom where I am recording now because there is too much space in the rest of the house that I'm in with a bunch of other people, and this is the most quiet place I could find. It's just that the reverb and echo isn't very good for the audio. We are going to go ahead and just get started here. Our first entry is by Swash, actually the winner of last month. It sounds actually pretty good. I think that it's a little bit too... I really love that he used a nice... I think his sword swing sound is the best of the sound. Like that impact and impale is perfect. I feel that it's a little bit too technological though. I think there is a very fine line to achieve in this sound because you're trying to make it metallic, and you're trying to make it a little bit focus on like the swinging, so air sounds and then metallic sounds if we're talking about sound design from a thematic standpoint. And I think that a lot of these sounds, you'll see that they all kind of very much used the charge up sound, and it sounds a little bit too robotic or mechanical, and it makes me feel like robot could be a robot, which is in itself a very cool thing, the fact that I can feel that about Marth here, but it doesn't, I don't think it really fits too well. That's really my biggest complaint about this sound, I think. I think overall this sound actually fits very well, and it actually, believe it or not, this competition, we had some repeat entries like Swash here appear in both the previous competition and this competition, and everybody's sounds are getting way better, which is awesome to hear. I've heard a lot of Swash's sounds before. He's posted them in the Discord channel, and I think this is probably his best one yet. I think that the qualifications for how good you have to be is just getting higher now, which is exciting to see. That means that everybody's getting a little bit better at sound design. But our next entry is actually going to be Nomi on the Discord channel. This sound is really awesome. It's really clean. It's really just... It's very, like, the one thing that's really hard to do is get clean source recordings, and you can tell that in this sound effect he actually used he used a room that doesn't have a lot of reverb and echo, and he used a room that doesn't have a lot of background noise, and every single source recording is just super clean and tight, and it's just like I love listening to the sound. It sounds really good. Everything is on point with the animation. Everything is tied together. That's another thing that Swash did really well as well. I feel like the syncing of the sounds to the animation is really on point with all of these sounds. The one thing that I think this sound is missing is it's missing its dynamics. It's very quiet throughout the entire sound, and I think that kind of adds to its own charm in a certain way. But personally, I would have added a little bit more of a bigger impact when Marth hits Little Mac, and I also would have added a little bit more. I would have just maybe made it rise in volume a little bit more, like make the sound tell the story. If we're talking about the entire envelope of the sound effect, then I would have started it a little bit loud, like you did, and you did that well, and then let it build up in volume, and then on that impact, it should be the loudest sound, and it is a little bit louder, but I feel like you could have expanded on those dynamics a little bit more. On that impact, it should have been way louder. I would have liked to hear a wider frequency spectrum as well. I would have liked to hear a lot more low end on the sound, and just a lot more frequency covered throughout the entire sound. Right now I'm only hearing a lot of the metallic sounds, and that makes the sound really clean, like I said, but I think that you would really expand on your dynamics quite a bit if you filled out that frequency spectrum more. Anyways, but I love the sound regardless. It's really awesome. And then next, I believe, is Fixer from the Discord channel. Ricardo Cervantes. Yeah, this one's cool too. I think that everybody had a really unique theme of everybody kind of like was in the ballpark around the same kind of sounds that they created. They all kind of had that shaking and that movement of the sword, and you could hear it in the sound, and it actually reflects Marth shaking while he's pulling his sword back for the shield breaker. And I think that reflects it pretty well, personally. This sound, I think I would have liked to hear a little bit more of a consistent sound throughout the draw back of the sword. Yeah, I would have liked to hear a little bit more of a consistent sound. I feel like it sounds a little bit empty throughout a lot of the sound, which isn't a bad thing. I think that you were pretty close on this, Ricardo, but I think that it could have been a little bit more. I feel like it could have just filled out a little bit more audio, and you could have used a little bit more attention to detail. Using something like looking at the example of what Nomi did really well is he had that like consistent sound going throughout, and I think there's a little bit too much dead air in your sound. Like there's not enough. They could have used a little bit more layers to make it fill out a little bit more. I really love the idea of using the glass breaking. The glass breaking is a really cool idea, and because it's a shield breaker, I think that's pretty brilliant. I think there's a couple other entries that did it as well. I think it's a great idea. So yeah, I think that's my biggest complaint about this one is that it could have had a little bit more layers to it, but a little bit more complex and a little bit bigger overall. Kind of the same notes that I had for Nomi, really, but overall very good sound as well. Then our next one is WTF You Garbage. He also did the glass break as well. Very awesome. I love the glass break. I think that I would have. I don't know if it was in the source recording of the glass break, but the reverb is a little bit too strong. It sounds like it's in a bathroom, much like you're hearing where I am now. I think that you could have taken off the reverb and maybe added or if you could have removed the reverb from the source recording, I definitely would have added my own reverb on top of that just to make it sound a little bit more organic. I would have also added, let's listen actually. I also would have added a little bit more low end on the sound. I would have added a like nice bassy and also like a nice punch sound, or maybe some sort of like flesh cutting sound. We actually recreated the sound at PAX Dev a couple months ago, and we used the sound of paper tearing for when the sword impacts the Little Mac, and it actually works pretty well for that kind of sword swipe or sword impact sound, and mixing that with a impact sound as well, like a punching sound, layering those two together really creates a really cool kind of slashing sound effect. And obviously adding in your layers and just balancing out your frequency spectrum from that point helps a lot too. I think your charge up sound is pretty good too. I think that you did a very good job of making it sound like it's not too robotic. I think it sounds very natural and it's built up. I think that's a little bit too high pitched. I would have just cut out that 8K or 5K, 8K, 10K range. Definitely cutting out that frequency spectrum would, with your equalizer, would make it feel a little bit more alive, or not alive, a little bit more less piercing. But I think this is a pretty good sound as well. Honestly, all these sounds are awesome. There's just some were better than others in their own right, and Speaking of better than others in their own right, we have our winner, which is actually Pants McGee. And if we listen,
Okay, so
I think that this sound is probably.
okay, so
I think this sound is definitely the cleanest out of all these. I love the idea of using voice in the sound. It just adds on to it. It adds a little bit more personality to
okay,
it.
so
The buildup is super clean, and as you can hear, it has that same buildup that WTFU Garbage has, but it actually doesn't sound piercing when you listen to it. And I love that it kind of sounds like it's like sliding up, like it almost sounds like a metal knife or a metal sword is being slid up against another sword, and then it's building up to this big impact.
okay, so
And you have a really good impact in here as well for when you make the impact of the sword hitting Little Mac. However, I feel that it would really benefit from that kind of sword slashing sound that I mentioned for WTFU Garbage. I think it would really benefit to have that that little slashing sound in there to bring it home. I think that your dynamics are really on point. It has that nice meaty impact. I think your frequency spectrum could be a little bit more filled out, and I think that's just something that comes with time and experience. But there's something called volume dynamics, and then there's also frequency dynamics. And frequency dynamics are really the same thing as volume dynamics. It's just that frequency dynamics are, in the biggest parts of the sounds, you should be covering a greater frequency spectrum. And I think on that impact is when you want to cover the greatest frequency spectrum. The 2 points I would cover the greatest frequency spectrums are probably when he draws his sword initially,
okay, so
and then when he does his impact. So yeah, that adding a little bit more frequency dynamics, and then also adding a little bit more, and then having volume dynamics, which you do have, is very important. I think that the frequency dynamics, I think that everybody here accomplished pretty well frequency dynamics in that sense. However, I think that it could just be cover the frequency spectrum a little bit more, and that just comes over time, honestly. That'll come with experience of figuring out how to fill out that frequency spectrum a little bit more. Sometimes it can be used with EQ, sometimes it's used by layering more sounds. Most of the time it's used by layering more sounds. So anyways, our winner is Mr. Pants McGee. Congratulations, Patrick. You win a free course from blipsounds.com. And we are going to, I'll be sure to send that to you, and you also get the title of King Blip in the Blipsounds Discord channel. So hopefully this will be out soon for you guys to check out, and stay tuned for the next competition where we will have a new sound for you guys. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and I hope to see you guys in the next competition. Thanks for watching.